So you won't be able to see me, but you should be able to hear me. I'm just going to talk through developing the GUI. This is for recording. All right, so today what we want to do is put our GUI together, make it actually work the way we want it to work. Now, if you remember, this is our GUI. This is what pops up when we first run our program. So if I hit run, file, give it a second. All right, cool. It pops up as expected. We've got a couple buttons here. We obviously don't have anything in our list. So we have file, new zoo, open zoo, save zoo, all the same stuff that we've done before. You hit exit, it ends your program. So let's see, what do we want to do? Let's add an animal first. All right, let's add to our list first, and that'll kind of start us off. So if I go into our code, one of the things that we need and that we had before, and that we definitely need here, is an array list. Right? Just like in our previous main, we had an array list that kind of keeps track of all of our animals. And we were able to pass that to different methods, so on and so forth. Well, again, a GUI is just a class, and we're creating an object of that class. And so within this class, I wanted to have an array list of animals. And you can see I've already made that here. So I have my animals array list. And that's, the array list that's going to keep track of all my animals across my whole program. I can pass that array list to different classes, to different objects. Those objects can take that array list, modify it, and it will still modify the same array list. So we have our array list. Of course, when we instantiate our class, we do have to create our array list as well. So animals equals new array list. So this is my constructor for my GUI class. And so inside my constructor, I'm just creating an empty array list, all right, just to start off my whole GUI. Again, this is a constructor. I'm putting in all my constructor values. If I had different class variables in here, I would obviously have that in my constructor as well. And I'm going to encapsulate this class, so I'm going to have a private array list animals. Okay. Which means I likely would want this to be, well, I don't need any getters or setters. If I do, I'll add those later. All right, so if I go back to my design, when I hit the add button, again, what do we want to happen? Right, we want this frame to pop up, if I'm not mistaken. Now it's off. We want this frame to pop up. Then we let the user click on either one of these. Depending on what they click on, we want to open up the respective frame for that type of animal. Okay. So again, all of these GUI components are objects. So what I can do is all of these buttons and menu items, all that stuff, they have event listeners, right? They fire some type of event. And so when we go to that event listener, whenever a user clicks on that button, clicks on that file, it's going to run whatever code is in our event listener. To access our event listener, all we have to do in the NetBeans GUI is double click that button. And it should take me to the event listener. Yep. So you see the add button is the name of my button. Action performed. That's our event listener. All right. And that's whenever somebody clicks on that add button, it's going to run whatever code is in this method right here. So what I can do, the first thing I want to do is pop up that new GUI, right? So the name of my GUI class is add animal I'm just going to call it AA equals new add animal. We have to import that class. Did I name it something else? Oh, add animal frame. So now I've created that add animal frame. Okay. And the next thing, I just want to look at the main down here. The next thing is to AA dot set visible to true. All right. Then there's something else I want to do. You can center it. I forget what the okay, so I'm setting the AA frame focusable to true, meaning the user can click on it and focus on it. However, this GUI object, my main GUI object, this got set focusable to false. So I don't want the user to be able to interact with our current frame. Okay. Let me do this all last.
You don't want them to interact with the frame?
With the main frame.
Oh,
The main
so
frame.
like the GUI.java and then pop up the
Right.
animal.
So let's imagine this NetBeans GUI is my main GUI. If I click on new project, I can't interact with the background GUI. So I want to replicate that behavior. I'm hoping it does. So let me, yeah, so you keep running it down here. I think I can change the default behavior of this project. The run behavior to run my, yeah, here we go. Lecture 10. Dot GUI dot GUI. All right, cool. So the GUI pops up. I hit add. This new GUI pops up, and this is still focusable. So obviously, it didn't do what I wanted to do, but at least we got the GUI to pop up. Okay. At the very least, we got the GUI to pop up. This Zoom stuff is really messing things up. All right. Now, there's some other behaviors I want to disallow. So, for example, Java GUI exit button. I know it is. So this frame, one of the issues is when I hit add, if I hit the X button, it closes out my whole program. I don't want it to close out my whole program. So I think it is, let's see, I forget what the code is. Let's see. So I just want to close the frame, not the whole program itself. Yep. AA dot set default close, and then there's a built-in value that we can use on the JFrame class. Dot, I believe is dispose on close. So dispose on close is the value. I believe. Let's test it. You have got to go somewhere.
You know,
Dispose on close works.
yeah, it's not a problem.
There you go.
And I closed out the,
Yep. And then another one is Java GUI center on screen. Set location relative. Yep. So another one, I do want to center this. So a dot set location relative to null is how you center it. So run this again. The main GUI is not going to be centered, but you see the type of animal is centered now. If I want to make that main GUI centered on this right here, so this is when we're actually this main method, they're actually creating the GUI object right here, new GUI, and setting it visible all in the same line. So I can continue this. I thought I could continue this. Dot set location relative to null. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So instead of making, this is basically an anonymous GUI, meaning that we don't create an actual object here, but I'm gonna have to create an object, GUI main GUI equals new GUI, and then main GUI, that's that location relative to null, and main GUI, that's set visible. So instead of it just being a new GUI that's set visible, which we're not creating a variable to hold our GUI, what I'm doing instead is I create a variable. That way I can call other methods from that variable. So now what you'll see is my GUI should be centered on my screen when I run this. I click add is centered as well. Now another thing, I don't want, right. So Java GUI, disable interaction. Let's try this. Set focusable, instead of that, let's say set enabled. Set enabled. Let's try that. And there we go. So it's disabled. Problem is, well, I don't think this is going to work either.
yeah, if I just set it to set enable, this not set enable, it works, but then I don't need to change the.
Yeah. Well, see, the problem is, so I have this, I do this, and I can't, it works as I'm thinking it. However, when I hit the exit button, it closes everything, which is what I don't want. So that's something I can figure out later. And you see my program is still technically running, so there's no frame, so that's a problem. That's okay. We'll just work with that. All right. Another thing is, so I'm creating this frame each time the user clicks on this button. Well, in an effort to be more efficient, I'm just going to use the same frame over and over again. So right here, I'm creating the frame here. But let's make this a class variable. That way I can just set it visible or invisible, if you will. So right here, I'm going to say private add animal frame AA. And right here, AA equals new add animal frame. All right, now it's a class variable. I can remove that. You see all of those become class operations. I made this a class variable. That way I can just reuse it over and over again. So instead of creating a new frame each time, it's going to just reuse the same frame. So add, I'm just setting it visible each time. It's the same frame. That way I'm not having to create more and more frames over and over again. I'm just reusing the same frame. All right. With me so far? All right. So now that we got that working, let's keep going further. So now let's move on to our add animal frame. Because this is where if they click on one of these buttons, we want to add those animals, right? So we have 3 frames here. I'm going to make those class variables as well so that we can reuse them. Okay? Reuse them. Private, add cat frame, private, add dog frame, private, add fish frame. And then I'm going to initialize those in my in my constructor. And again, even though I'm initializing this, it's not visible until I set it visible. So I can initialize these, no problem. The user will not see them until I make them visible. And slow me down if you have any questions.
What does the init components do?
That's just another method, built in to NetBeans GUI builder. Basically, it's initializing all of these components for us. So NetBeans puts it into its own method so that we don't have to see that code. You're really curious to see that code? I think, where is it at? It's somewhere in here. You can look at it if you want. I think it's right here. No, that's not it. It's NetBeans generated code. It might be this right here. Yeah, here you go. So it's this method right here that you actually can't even edit. NetBeans automatically generates it for you. And you see it just says generated code. So yeah. All right, so I have my 3 frames. Okay. The other thing I want to do, however, is in my GUI. Oh, good morning, Caleb.
Morning. I'm excuse my class, but I got an email, so it's not out here.
Yeah, I didn't think you were coming.
You get my email?
I did.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just submitted it.
During makeup week.
Is that the end?
It's starting next week, yeah.
I mean, we have to, I gotta get ready for these.
Yeah, I'm recording for you.
Oh, why don't you guys come in there?
All right, tomorrow.
You look so excited.
Tired right now. Money hurts. Yeah, I'll see you guys on Friday.
All right. So we add the other thing I want to do with my main GUI is we have our array list. We want that array list to be shared across all our GUIs so that we can add to the same array list each time. Kind of like before when we were passing it to different methods. However, this time we're passing it to GUIs, so on and so forth. So when we initialize these GUIs, let's just pass array lists to it each time we initialize it. So in our design, our main GUI, we already have it. We have the array list. In our add animal frame, I'm going to make this array list I think, or is it called animals? I'm gonna make this array list a parameter. Import all of those. And I'm gonna have another private array list animals. This dot animals equals animals. That way we can pass in that same array list. And again, Java is what with array lists? Passed by what? You remember? Close, passed by reference. Meaning it's going to pass just a pointer to the same array list in memory. So although we're in different classes, it's still going to be modifying the same array list in memory. So we're safe in doing this. Right? The same array list is going to reside in memory no matter what class we pass it to. It's not going to be a copy.
What's the this dot animal?
This dot animals is setting the class array list equal to the parameter.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So what that means is, back in our main GUI, when we call our AA equals new add animal, now it's an error because we need to pass in the array list that we created here. So in our main GUI, it's going to be an empty array list, and we're just going to pass that pointer to all of our different classes. So let's do that again for all of them. Oh, where's the error? Oh, I don't need this main method. It's just giving me an error because it's trying to create a default one. I don't need that main method. All right. I don't know why. Contains files with errors. But I don't see any errors. Misspelled word. It must have a, oh, there you go. The comment was right here, so it was commenting all this stuff out, including my closing bracket. So that error should go away now. Yep. All right, so now that's working. In our add cat frame, I want to do the same thing. Private array list, animals, import. I'm getting tired of typing this, so pass that as a parameter. This dot animals equals animals. Cool. Add cat works. Add dog, bless you. Private. Oops, that wasn't supposed to go there. Supposed to go inside my class. Private. Pass that as a parameter. And then this dot animals equals animals. So I'm just, again, passing this array list to all of my different classes. Private. And then finally, last one, this dot animals equals animals. That way, in whatever class I'm in, I can modify the same array list. It's going to change it, and it's going to update my list, which again will be our array list, the list on our main GUI. Why are these errors?
Imported them, like it's not extended to the other animal.
What do you mean?
Like
I've imported them. They're imported.
I was just thinking that they weren't connected. Like the add cat, add dog, add fish were connected to the add animal frame. The same they are.
Yeah, they're imported. What are these errors?
Oh, is it? This dot.
I have to pass in my animals array list. I modified their constructor, so I got to make sure I pass in that array list. So now all of my frames will share the same array list across all of all the frames. So when I add a cat, it's going to delete the cat from the same array list across the board. All right. Okay, so now let's go back to our add animal frame or design. So when we click on this icon, we want to add a cat. So double click it. Let's do add, what do I call it? This dot add cat frame dot set visible to true. And you know what I'm going to do for this one? This dot set visible to false. So this current frame, I'm going to set the visibility to false. Once you click on add cat, that's all I want. And I'm going to say this dot. Before I do that though, because we want it to be centered. This dot add cat frame dot set location relative to null. And we wanted to dispose on close, not exit on close. Add cat frame dot set default close behavior, J frame dot dispose on close. That way, when we click on the X button, it doesn't close my whole program, it just closes that frame again. Does that code make sense right here? So again, we're making it centered on the screen. We're setting the default close behavior or operation to just close the frame, not the whole program. We're making the cat frame visible. And then this current frame, which is the add animal frame, I'm making that invisible. All right. I don't want them to be able to click on cat and then go back to add animal. If they close the add cat frame, it's going to go back to the main screen. So let's see what that behavior looks like. I click on add, I click on the cat, and you see the add animal frame disappears. Close that, we're back here. Click on add, cat, add animal disappears. One more time, cat, add. I just want to see. Yeah. None of those buttons. All right. I guess there needs to be a submit button, doesn't there? All right, let's do that. All right. Same thing for add dog.
If you made the variable cancel the same for each frame,
Correct.
so you're just gonna put the same code under, you don't need to put the same code in there once.
No, I'll have to put the same code in each class, but it's going to be the exact same code.
Oh.
Same thing with the submit button. It's going to be the same code, except we're going to be submitting, you know, a cat, a dog, or a fish, depending on which one it is. The cancel button, that behavior should be exactly the same across the different frames. All right. All right. So let's go back to our add cat. So what we need here, so we have our radio buttons, and I checked it. You can click on all of these radio buttons. We don't necessarily want that. So what we need is something called a button group, which takes, you can add buttons to your button group, and only one of those buttons in that group can be selected. So if I look at my frame, I should have 3 different button groups. One for these two, because one or the other can be selected. One for these two, again, because one or the other can be selected. And one for these two, one or the other can be selected. Now, I can't remember if I already added those button groups. I did not. And that's fine. So, button group 1, 2, they're invisible, 3. Yeah, they're invisible. But if you go back to your source, I should have 3 button groups. Button group 1, 2, and 3. Just, well, yeah, it just makes up names for them. They're not visible components. They're just objects, like in code. And when you add those visible components, those visible buttons to that object, it controls the behavior of those buttons. So it's not something you can see. You don't see that kind of behavior, but the button groups handle that behavior. All right. So in my constructor, I want to put the code, add those buttons to the button group. Okay. it's important to do this underneath your init components method, because that's what actually initializes all the components. So creates the objects for them. If we haven't created the object yet, we can't use them. So if I try to do the code up here, I'll get errors because they haven't been created yet. All right, so make sure you do that. If you want to modify any of your objects in your frame, make sure you do it after your init components method. So I'm going to do this dot button group 1 dot add, and I want to add the, what's the first one? This dot, I'm going to, I think it's mail, this dot mail radio button. And this dot button group 1 dot add this dot female radio button. So I add those 2 radio buttons to group 1. So one or the other. And actually I could rename that radio button. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I can find it because it's invisible. If I double click it, and let's see, refactor, oh, I can. Refactor, come on now. Rename, sex, radio group. Perfect. You renamed it to the sex radio group. All right, the next one is going to be the number of legs. This dot radio group, what's it called? Button group, sorry. Dot add this dot, which one is it? 2 leg. Yep. This dot button group 2 dot add this dot 4-leg radio button. And I'm going to rename this one again to legs radio group. Because in the future, I'm going to get all these values and I want to be able to access these by a specific name. Radio group 1, 2, and 3 really doesn't tell me what buttons are associated with that. And finally, this dot button group 3 dot add, I forget the other one, declawed. Is this dot is declawed? Yep. This dot button group 3 dot add this dot not declawed. So those are all our radio buttons. And again, I want to rename that. Refactor rename Claude radio group. All right, so now I've added all of those to a radio group, and it should control that behavior. So now I can only select one or the other, male or female, 2 or 4 legs. No, yes. Before I could have selected all of these, but now it's one or the other. Does that make sense? All right, so what else do we need to do? Well, the breed is just a text box, so that makes it really simple. We just got to get the text from the text box. So now let's do the submit button. All right, so double click submit. All right. Take us to our submit button action performed. So what do we want to do when we submit? Right. We want to create a cat object, add that cat to our array list. Okay. Cat object, add the cat to our array list. All right. So let's create just a general cat. Cat equals new cat. Import the cat. Okay. We have to create a cat object, add the cat object to our array list. All right, so the first thing we want to get is, what is the sex of the cat? So we have 2 options, right? Button 1 and button 2, which is male or female. But we do have that sex radio group. So I can do this dot sex radio group dot get selection dot get, what else can we do? All right, so get selection. Let's see what that returns. Now we're gonna do, these are J radio button selected equals J radio button. Cool. So what I did is I get the selected button and I cast that to a J radio button because we know it's a radio button. We just don't know which one it is. However, which one it is really doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to us. Whichever one is selected, they can select male or female. We just need the words from that radio button. So if I'm not mistaken, in animal, sex is a string. So I just need to get the string. So I can say cat.set sex selected dot get text. And that will get whatever text is next to the radio button. If they selected male, that text is going to say male. If they selected female, the text is going to say female. So let's debug this and let's see what's going on. Let's put a break statement right here and debug this. Add cat. I'm just going to hit male. Submit. So now we're here. A step over? No, it doesn't work. That's my error. I guess I can't cast it, so I got to get something else. What's the error? Cannot be cast to a radio button. Okay, so this is where trusty Google comes in hand. Java get selected button. There we go. How do I get which radio button is selected? Okay. Well, that sucks. So I won't be able to just get this selected with a method call. I'll have to loop through the buttons and find them. So, yeah, so find the selected sex button. So if I don't have to loop through because I only have 2 buttons. If this dot mail dot is selected, I can just say cat dot set sex mail. Or I can do even better, J radio button selected. Selected equals mail this dot mail radio button. Else selected equals this dot female. So what I'm doing is I just created a J button right here just to hold a reference. If the male radio button is selected, I'm setting my selected radio button equal to that one in there. Else, if that one's not selected, then the female one has to be selected. There we go. However, if we're talking about user input, right, there is a possibility that they didn't select either one. Right? And we don't want that behavior. So we could check, so else if this dot female radio button dot is selected. So else, I think it's J alert. I can't remember, Java alert. Right, right. I want to say it's a J option pane, yeah, J option pane does show message dialog. J options pane dot option pane dot show, and see there's a whole bunch of them. You could do an input dialog, a confirm dialog. I just want to do a message dialog. The parent component is no, and then the text is please select or no sex selected. All right, I want to do that and then return from my submit button method. So that return is going to say, all right, well, we're not submitting, so just return from that method. So nothing is selected. If I hit submit, no sex selected. Okay, and we're back to the frame. So I just returned from that method. All right. Yeah.
Just stack each one on top of each other? Or?
Well, we get to the return for whichever one is first.
Oh.
Now we could just like do all of it and get all of the error messages. If the error message has a value, meaning there was an error somewhere, pop that up, then return. If you wanted to show all of them on the same dialog box. Right, but the way that I have it coded, it's going to show one and then just return. So they have to go sequentially down. So we set sex selected.get text. Let's just do just so that we have another line to go to. let's see what happens here. Let's debug this. Add, cat, mail, submit. So now it worked. We have the radio button and we have the one I selected. So if I say cat.setSex, down here we have our cat variable. The sex should say male. All right, once we do this next method. By default, I think it's a female. So when I do this, it should say male. It changed to male. And that, again, I just put that just to have a line. So now it's doing what we expect. All right, well, that's it for today. We'll pick this back up on Wednesday. Hopefully this is making more sense of just connecting the buttons and the actions to your code.
Are you gonna send that to me?
Do you want it?